Hello! Hello, hello! Aloha! My name is Stuart K. Hayashi, and I am coming at you from Nili Town, Hawaii. And today is September 16th, and the Commission on Presidential Debates, which decides which people participate in the US presidential debates, issued an announcement. The CPD said that it is inviting Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton to the presidential debates. And that's very understandable. But the CPD is excluding Gary Johnson. And this is a travesty. There are only 3 candidates whose names will be on the ballot running for president on all 50 states, plus Washington, D.C. Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, and Gary Johnson. There's no good reason to exclude him. So this exclusion is a travesty. Therefore, I am uploading this video asking the CPD to quote hashtag let Gary debate. But more than that, this video is addressed to the likely sponsors of the upcoming presidential debate. Based on who the sponsors were in the past, we think we know who the sponsors will be this time. There's Anheuser-Busch, and likely we think the International Bottled Water Association will sponsor again. And another likely sponsor is Southwest Airlines. And while I want to address all the firms that are sponsoring the upcoming debates, I want to address Southwest Airlines specifically, because this travesty doesn't have to go on uncorrected. Gary Johnson has not been invited to the first debate, but there's still a possibility, however remote anyone might assume that possibility is, there's still the possibility of Gary Johnson being allowed into the second and third presidential debates. And hopefully his running mate Bill Weld will be allowed in the vice presidential debates against Tim Kaine and Mike Pence. I implore Southwest Airlines and all the other sponsors to lean on CPD and urge the CPD to correct this injustice and allow Gary into the debates, second and third debate at least. And here's why. In business school, we learned about the history of Southwest Airlines, of how it got started. And what Southwest Airlines had to go through at the time of its founding, is remarkably similar. There are ominous parallels with what is presently happening with the presidential debates. Back in the late 1960s, Roland King and Herbert Kelleher wanted to start their own airline, Southwest Airways, today Southwest Airlines. But there was a problem. At the time, those markets they wanted to serve were dominated by an oligopoly of 3 airlines in particular: Continental Airlines, Braniff, and Texas International, which at the time was called Trans-Texas Airways. And this was an oligopoly, a cartel backed by law. At the time, there was a government agency called the Civil Aeronautics Board, which is not to be confused with the FAA. The CAB's duty was to restrict competition. It was to specify that only a limited number of airlines were allowed to travel specific routes and serve passengers on specific routes, say the Southwestern routes. So when Southwest Airlines was about to get started in the late 1960s, Continental, Braniff, and Texas International went to a Texas court and asked for an injunction to have the CAB bar Southwest Airlines from competing against them. And Herbert Kelleher, being an attorney, went to the courts and argued for that Southwest Airlines deserves to compete. We're supposed to be a country of free enterprise, right? Finally, the Texas Supreme Court overturned lower rulings, and the Texas Supreme Court allowed for Southwest Airlines to compete. But even then, Southwest Airlines' problems weren't finished. In 1971, again, Braniff and Texas International, a two-party oligopolistic cartel, again went to a judge and asked for the judge to file an injunction making CAB bar Southwest Airlines from competing. And once again, Herbert Kelleher had to go to court and argue on Southwest's behalf. Fortunately, good sense prevailed. Southwest prevailed and was allowed to compete. We are all better off for that. And today, we face something very similar. We have a two-party cartel that is excluding an upstart, a challenger, a worthy challenger who could change everything. Again, I mean, this is a big deal. A lot of people might say, well, Gary Johnson is just some weirdo. We can't let any weirdo enter the debates, right? Gary Johnson is a serious contender. Again, due to the hard work of volunteers, he is officially going to be on the ballot of every U.S. state plus Washington, D.C. Only 3 people, again, are on the ballot for president in all 50 states plus D.C. Trump, Clinton, and Gary Johnson. Now, we should consider what is the purpose of the debates. The purpose of the presidential debates is for undecided voters to get to know the candidates, because even at this point in the election, normally in the past, people have not been completely aware of who the candidates were and what they stood for. And the purpose of the debates is to give the candidates a platform to so that the electorate can get to know the candidates and their positions on the issues. Frankly, it's different this time because everyone knows who Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are. At this point, everyone knows what their positions are, and we know who these people are. They have enormous reputations, not necessarily positive. And frankly, they're both overexposed. I mean, Donald Trump is so overexposed that in comparison, Kim Kardashian and Kanye West are recluses that nobody knows about. We already have our opinions of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. But what about Gary Johnson? So I'm going to cite a Quinnipiac University survey that these results were released on September 14th. Already people had opinions on the favorability of Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Now, surprisingly, more than half the people had a negative opinion of both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. These are the 2 most divisive candidates for president in decades. On the other hand, when the respondents were asked whether they had a favorable or unfavorable opinion of Gary Johnson, the majority, 53%, said they needed more information. And the debates are a perfect venue for the electorate to get to know Gary Johnson and see if they agree with him or not. Now, I want to talk about exactly what's going on here. How divisive are Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump? Again, this same Quinnipiac survey asked the supporters of both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, what is your main reason for supporting Hillary Clinton? Okay, so Quinnipiac went to supporters of Hillary Clinton and asked them, what is your main reason for supporting Hillary Clinton? What is the main reason for which you will vote for Hillary Clinton in the upcoming election? 32% said their main reason was they genuinely like Hillary Clinton. They genuinely think she's very qualified, she has a good record behind her, and she's going to do a good job. That's 32%. 54% said their main reason was just to prevent Donald Trump from getting the White House. More than half of people who say they're supporting Hillary Clinton are not even voting for Hillary Clinton. They're just voting against Donald Trump. Now, what about Trump supporters? Is the situation any better with them? Again, Quinnipiac went to Trump supporters and asked the same question. What is your main reason for supporting Donald Trump? 23% said it's because they genuinely like Donald Trump and think he will do a good job. 23%. 66% said they just want to stop Hillary Clinton from getting the White House. 66%. So again, in both cases, people who say they're for a particular Democrat or Republican are not really for that candidate. More than half the time, they just want to oppose the other candidate. And it has come down to that. We have been reduced to that. And it doesn't have to be that way. If you ask people who support Gary Johnson, what is their main reason for supporting Gary Johnson, often the answer you'll get is, well, maybe at first, I really did want to protest against Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. But the more I got to know Gary Johnson, the more I thought, here's a stand-up guy. Here's a stand-up person who admits his mistakes, who doesn't try to pretend that he knows everything, who is humble enough in a rational way to say, okay, when I don't know the answer to a question, I'm going to ask for more information, regardless of how it makes me look. I'm going to seek out more information. That is how autodidacts learn. That's how autodidacts build up a vast store of knowledge. And again, this is not the case of some unknown weirdo trying to barge into the proceedings. Listen to the American people. There are many good reasons why Southwest Airlines and other sponsors, or likely sponsors, ought to lean on the CPD and urge that Gary Johnson be allowed in the second and third debates. First of all, we're supposed to be a republic. And allowing Gary Johnson in the debate will be consistent, helping us live up to our own principles. It will help us live up to our own claim that we are indeed a constitutional republic where everyone has a voice and a choice. Second of all, think about the ratings and think about if Gary Johnson is allowed into the second and third debates, that will be historic. It will be the first time a third-party candidate has been allowed into the main general election debate in almost a quarter century. And lots of people will tune in because they are curious about Gary Johnson. They will want to see history being made. Also, and think of the goodwill. It will show people Southwest Airlines and all these other sponsors are really interested in standing up for the Republic and standing up for the American people. By contrast, what happens if the sponsors don't speak up? What happens if Gary Johnson is excluded from all of the debates? Well, it will lend a lot of credence to the very popular complaint, the very popular lament that despite all of our lofty proclamations, we in the United States do not live as a democracy or as a republic, that really we live under an oligarchy. An oligarchy not unlike the oligopoly that tried to squeeze Southwest Airlines out of the market. And I think that if Gary Johnson is excluded from all three debates, the TV ratings will be much lower than they otherwise would be. Many people, such as myself, will be disappointed. We already know what Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are like. Who wants to hear more of their squawking? Who wants to hear more of that backbiting? It'll just be the same old, same old. And it doesn't have to be that way. We can make history instead. And again, Gary Johnson is not some unwelcome interloper. Listen to what the American people say. All right, so Suffolk University did a survey for the newspaper USA Today and asked response to this question, quote, if a third-party candidate is certified by a majority of state ballots, should he or she be included in the debates this fall, unquote. 76% of likely voters answered yes. Yes, such a candidate should be included. And Gary Johnson qualifies for that. He is certified by a majority of state ballots. Now, his name was not brought up. Gary wasn't mentioned by name in that survey. What about when Gary is brought up by name? In the case of Morning Consult, 52% of respondents said yes, Gary Johnson, mentioned by name, should be included in the presidential debates. In the case of Quinnipiac University, 62% of respondents said yes, he should be included. And Quinnipiac divided the response by age groups. When it posed that question to millennials, those aged 18 to 34, 82% of them said Gary Johnson ought to be included. And when it comes to TV, people who watch TV, when it comes to getting good ratings for your television programs, the demographic of those aged 18 to 34 are a very important consumer demographic, very much sought after. Many governors, former governors, have vouched for Gary Johnson. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mitt Romney, Mitch Daniels, and incidentally, Mitch Daniels is a member of the CPD. They've all said Gary Johnson deserves a place in the presidential debates. He has earned it. So therefore, please let Gary debate. And at the end of this video right now, I'm going to ask some friends of mine also to make their own videos for YouTube saying hashtag let Gary debate. Please make that the title. I'm going to ask the vlogger Jordan Owen 42 to make such a video. Although I have to qualify that. You see, Jordan Owen 42 has already made videos in support of Gary Johnson. Therefore, him making another one asking that let Gary debate would be a bit redundant. But his videos are very good, and I recommend you check them out. Also, I'm going to ask my friend Pablo, who lives on the same island as me, Oahu, to make his own hashtag let Gary debate video. Now I have to admit to you that Pablo has been a champion of third parties long before I was. Years ago, he was already saying third parties deserve to be heard. And I have to admit to you quite shamefully that I was not on board. I repeated the same cliches and, frankly, rationalizations about how, no, we should stick to the Democrats and Republicans. Don't waste your vote. Nah. It's embarrassing looking back on that now. So I asked Pablo to make a hashtag let Gary debate video as well. And Pablo, you were right and you are right. I was wrong. Finally, I'm being asked some friends of mine, Sophie and Isabel, also to make videos asking to let Gary debate. And this one's a bit unorthodox because, frankly, Sophie and Isabel are not U.S. citizens, and only one of them is in the USA. So why, even if they wanted to, they couldn't vote for President of the United States. They couldn't vote for Gary Johnson or Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. So why am I asking them for help? It's because they, even though they're not U.S. citizens, they have been watching and they have been very concerned. They have been following this. And this points to a larger issue. The whole world is watching us. The whole world looks to the United States to set a good example. They expect the USA to live up to its own rhetoric and be the constitutional republic that it claims to be. And you can check the international press on this. Newspapers throughout the whole world have been talking about Gary Johnson and the challenge he poses to Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. You can read Norwegian newspapers talking about this, and you can Google that. And many of people writing in Norwegian newspapers are asking, why is Gary Johnson not being included? Why are the American people not being listened to by the CPD? And that's a very good question. So again, we have a chance to show the world that the United States is a republic that listens to the people and gives everyone a voice and choice. And it's not an oligarchy wherein only Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton get to decide everything, where 82% of millennials and 62% of the American people are actually heard. So that's what I have to say. I thank Anheuser-Busch and the International Bottled Water Association and Southwest Airlines for serving customers, from the United States and the rest of the world. I think you do a good job. And please, in this case, again, serve the American people in another way. Do the right thing. Ask that the American people be heard, and let Gary debate. Now, I understand another common Another common reply to people like me is, well, Gary Johnson has no chance. He's not even being let into the first debate. He can't be president, so why bother? And I think that's very funny because just 1 year ago, people were saying that about Donald Trump. A year ago, people were saying there is no chance Donald Trump will get the nomination for the Republican Party. Donald Trump surprised all of these people. This whole election season has been one of surprises. Therefore, this is what I have to say. We can do with one more surprise. If Gary gets into the second and third debates, yes, that would be a surprise. But it would just be another surprise. And this time, a very welcome surprise. Surprises let the American people and the Republic prevail. I thank you for watching, and I hope Southwest Airlines and all the other sponsors take this into consideration. Please lean on the CPD, urge the CPD to let Gary debate. Let the American people be heard. Thank you very much, and mahalo.